Welcome to another edition of All Octaves with me, Val Kleinhans. I am going to dive into thrash metal a little bit this episode, one of my favorites of the subgenres, with Julian of Krypt today. Julian, thanks so much for hanging out.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
I'm stoked. I found you guys on Instagram and I loved the whole vibe, truthfully. So tell me, what is the story behind the beginning of Krypt?
Well, so our other guitar player, Mike, he like lived across the breezeway from me, like in this apartment complex we lived at, and I
Mhm.
ordered a guitar. Um, and I didn't really know him, so he like just kept an eye on it for me because it was like outside my door, and it was not the greatest of neighborhoods, so he like
Mm.
just on it until I got home from work, and we just hit it off there. But we didn't end up like actually starting the band until a few months later, and I put like an ad out for looking for a drummer on Facebook, and that's how we found Adam. And he brought in his buddy Jesse, and that's it. Went from there pretty much.
Cool. So at what point did you guys decide we really want to take this band seriously? We want to see where it goes?
I mean, after like the first couple of shows, we kind of realized like we had something there because it kind of clicked for us as far as like working together. Like writing music, it was like real fluid and pretty easy to get going. And then once we did those shows, it was like, oh, like we can actually work our way into doing this. And then COVID happened, and we're like, well, now we have a lot of time to just sit around and write music. So
Everybody did. That's what, see, I live in Minnesota, and that's what all the Minnesota bands say. They're like, well, here's winter again. Let's just
yeah,
sit inside. And
pretty
this is
much.
going to be the writing. And then the albums are always out, the spring or the fall before, with
Yeah.
touring in the summer. Cool. So, y'all describe yourselves as thrash metal. What does thrash mean to you? Because it means something different to everybody.
I don't know. I mean, it's like fast, aggressive, like punk music with like better guitar players in it, I guess.
Yeah.
Is the best way to explain it. Like if you play punk rock or like hardcore, like I guess 80s style hardcore, and you actually get better at your instrument, you're probably going to start playing crossover or thrash. I don't really know how to explain like the best way to explain it. It's just like a genre that we play. It's got like its specificities and stuff, but we kind of try to mix in not just thrash. Like there's a lot of death metal influence and black metal influence, and like a lot of hardcore stuff too. Like all of us kind of bring in those bases and stuff.
Okay, that's natural. So, it's a collaborative thing.
Yeah, we don't want it to just be like straight thrash because honestly, it can get pretty boring. Like I've looked at like a lot of bands over the years of like modern neo thrash bands, and I'm like, y'all are like, I mean, those are the exact same riffs. Like you're not kind of trying to mix in other stuff, and it gets a little repetitive, and I don't want to be stuck in that bubble.
Right. Okay. So they're doing like what Testament and Exodus and Death Angel have done like 20 and 30 years ago. And you're like, yeah, we've kind of been there, done that.
Exactly. And I mean, sometimes it can be a little cringy, like bands that have the word thrash in their name.
Yeah.
Kind of gets a little, you're like confused. You're like, I'm pretty sure we could tell you're a thrash man. You don't have to put it in your name.
It, it gets to be a lot. So
Yeah.
how do you think that sound has evolved? Anybody that calls themselves thrash, do you think it has changed at all because of outside influences?
I would say yeah, because I mean you've got the introduction of like crossover that was like a huge mix of it, and then death metal came around, and a lot of these bands are starting to add that. Like thrash used to be very like, I mean it was fast back then, but it's gotten a lot faster. People are down tuning even more. Like we
Right.
actually moved into C sharp. The record we recorded was in D sharp, so we dropped another whole step. So it sounds even heavier, but like a lot of bands started adding like blast beats into their stuff. Which has, I mean, that's like the death metal and black metal influence on it. And like, I think a lot of bands are starting to add more of that, which is good. And then you got like crossover bands like Power Trip, which kind of bridge, the mix of hardcore and, thrash together and stuff like that. So I think it's just a lot of them are starting to take influence from other genres instead of just playing straight up thrash, which I think is nice.
Yeah, it's an evolution. It's what we got to do. And the down tuning, I'm not totally opposed to. Like sometimes it works. I don't know how much
Yeah.
of the Pantera reunion you've been following, but like you can hear the down tuning just because Phil's voice can't really go as high, like in that Cemetery Gates note anymore. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, now I can hear that Zach is down tuning for Phil's voice now when they're going out and doing the shows just to match him and accommodate him. And it doesn't sound bad. It's just different. So
Yeah.
it's not something to totally be afraid of. It's important to experiment, I think. Do you try and experiment in Krypt?
Not in terms of like tunings like that, but I mean, we kind of decided like let's try dropping the tuning, and we did it at practice, and it was like, wow, this sounds way heavier. Because like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the heavy songs on the record, like From the Depths, already like super heavy, but then we like heard it with the lower tuning, that one and Vultures Will Feast, and we're like, wow, like there's like the breakdown parts and stuff, and we're like, this is awesome. So we decided to stick with that, and we played our first shows 2 weekends ago with the new tuning, and it was very receptive, like all the crowd. So we're definitely
Cool.
going to stick with that. But I wouldn't say like as far as experimenting, like I don't know if I want to be one of those bands that has like you know multiple guitars on stage that are in different tunings and stuff like that, and then we swap between it. I think I would like to just stay in one tuning, and if we decide to change it to something else, we all change and just stick with that.
Right. It's more uniform that way. It sounds just more
Yeah,
consistent
because
that way.
it's like I just feel it gets like kind of weird, like people seeing you swap guitars, which I understand that as far as like a maintenance situation where it's like, oh, like my guitar is going out of tune and like this one isn't, like, and I don't have to worry about like tuning up on stage or like a string breaks or what have you. But like as far as like swapping, it seems like it gets tedious and it's noticeable, and people are like, that's kind of weird that they're like doing that. I don't really see us really doing that much.
Got it. Take me back to, I mean, you talked about doing live shows. They're exciting. When you did the down tuning, you were stoked to see that people were receptive to that. Take me to your first live shows. Were you nervous? Were you excited? Were you happy?
So I was very nervous. I mean, for being how young I am compared to everyone else in the band, like this was my first ever band, and like those are my first shows ever. And same with Mikey, our the guitar player. Adam and Jesse, when he was still in the band, like they both had played in bands years ago because they were both in their 40s, and like me and Mikey were in our 20s. So well, at the time I was 19, but
Wow. Okay.
they were definitely like very jarring, and it was very nervous and like nerve wracking at first, but I kind of realized like after the first couple ones, I'm like, I actually really enjoy this, like not the idea of like all eyes on me, that I think that gets kind of lame. Like, oh, I want people to see me. I just like the fact that like, people are enjoying the music, and that kind of gives me more incentive to want to do it because I like making people happy, I guess, as far as like music wise.
Yeah. You like the horns. We like the moshing. We're here for all of it. We want
Yeah, absolutely. Stage dive, all that.
it. Well, so I didn't realize there was such an age difference within the band. Are there any challenges at all with that, or does it even matter?
Not really. I mean, so Jesse's not in the band anymore because he passed away a few years ago now.
Oh,
About 2 years ago. So we have another bass player now, but he's 31 if I'm not mistaken. So I mean, there's like a bit of a difference in age between each of us, but it's not a big deal, honestly. Like, I mean, granted, Adam being older, he's got obligations and stuff. I mean, he's got a wife and a house and all that, and
mm.
the rest of us don't really have like any spouses or anything, so it's not like that. But it's not really a big deal. We work around everything, and we're working towards being able to all do this like exclusively. That way we don't have to worry about jobs and stuff like that. So that's the goal anyway.
Okay, so the uniform goal is what helps keep everybody on the same track. We're all on the same page. Does that maybe help with influences? Like maybe they're introducing you, as a younger guy to something that maybe you weren't aware of, or vice versa. Maybe you're introducing him to a new sound that you're like, whoa, let's try this now.
It's a bit of both. So Adam, him being the older one, like he grew up in the in like the '90s hardcore scene, you know, and then kind
Right.
of went from there into like into black metal and stuff like that. And like so, I already knew about a lot of hardcore because that's the initial genre that I got into, and then like a few months later, I found metal and went from there. But like he showed me a lot of black metal that like I you know some I'm not a huge fan of because black metal can be like that. But then there's like other stuff like Emperor and all that that I got into.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm showing him a lot of new stuff. Like a lot of these new bands, like 200 Stab Wounds or Sanguisuga Bog, and Gate Creeper and all these other bands. Like I'm showing him those, and he's like, "Wow, these are like really good bands," and they kind of have a bit of a nostalgia factor to them as far as like mixing hardcore with like death metal and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I think it's a bit of both. Like we try to learn from each other and figure out like some new influences and stuff like that, and just helps us write better. I feel like being stuck in like a specific thing without wanting to make any changes kind of makes your music boring after a while.
Right. So it helps when you're creating, it helps when you're writing, helps all around. Maybe even in
Yeah,
production. Like you're like, oh, now we have a new sound that we might want to achieve and do a different mix too.
yeah,
Sweet. Cool. So tell me about Ripe with Sin too. I've seen all that all over Instagram as well.
yeah. So I mean, we decided to have it recorded this past June. Prior to that, I mean, we had a bunch of songs and stuff like that, and we had talked to the record label that we're on, and they were like, "Hey, like we'd like to be able to get an album out by the end of the year. Like we're not having a set date yet, but if you guys have like an idea of what you want to do, like what the song or the album title is and all that, and like how many songs you want on it, like we'll go from there. We'll get some studio time set up when y'all are ready, and we'll just go from there." And it was pretty much that. I mean, we just started getting into writing mode very close to like within the last 2 months before we went in the studio because we'd already recorded some singles earlier in the year last year, around February. Um, so we pretty much like got some more stuff written and went in the studio, and it was pretty fluid. Honestly, it was very like fast paced. We got it done in 3 days, uh, and but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Honestly, like there's definitely some stuff I'd fix personally. Like as far as like some bits of vocals that I'm not a huge fan of, or some of my guitar playing and stuff like that. But overall, like I think the record's amazing. And I'm really happy with how it came out.
Yeah. Well, so for a lot of young bands that might not have any idea how to start or how to get connected with a label like you guys did, what every band that does have a label, they have their own story as to how they got there. So what is the Krypt story of how you got connected with yours?
So Adam, our drummer, used to play in a black metal band in Atlanta with this guy who owns a house that is used as a venue. His name's Laramie.
Oh, cool.
This place is at the Catacombs, and we got a show booked there right when bands started doing shows again in August of 2021.
Hmm.
And we got added on that bill with I think Billy Bats and the Maid Band, which is like a punk band full of a bunch of young kids. Are really good. Triangle Fire, which is a like a crust punk band, like with a lot of like death metal influence. They're really good as well. Um, I cannot remember off the top of my head the other two bands that played that night, or one band. But we got there and everything like that, and the guy who owns the label was there, and we didn't even know. Like we knew of him, but
Oh.
he was in the house smoking, and we were outside setting up because the like they have a stage outside and stuff like that that they set up and everything, and we we got all our stuff set up, and then Laramie was like, "Dude, like you got to go check these guys out," and label reps like, "Dude, I'm trying to smoke right now, like hold on," and he's like, "No, you need to put it down and go outside." So then he goes outside and we start playing, and like there's like people setting off fireworks, and like there's a circle pit. There's like 250 people or something like that. It was nuts. And like
Wow.
as soon as we were done playing, because I think we were the last band that played or the second last band, I cannot remember off the top of my head. Uh, he like came up to us and he kind of, he introduced himself, and he was like, "Hey, like I run the record label and this and that, and we've got a couple bands like." I really dig what you guys got going on. And he made a post that night about like us, and then the next day, I guess he kind of realized that night, he was like, "I want to sign these guys," which apparently is this is the only band he's actually done that, where he saw them on a whim and then was like, I need to sign them. So he sent us a message the next day and offered a like a contract.
Wow. So so Krypt is worth interrupting a smoke break for. That's what we learned today. You heard it here
Yeah.
first.
Or you can smoke during it. I mean,
But when it comes to business, you can interrupt if you want. But like,
yeah.
that's awesome. So you get the contract. What's the reaction to everybody else? Are you just like blown away that it happened that quickly and it was so random?
Yeah, I mean, we were super psyched because I mean, we kind of knew of him, and like he had a lot of stuff going on, and it was just like the contract he offered with all the like whatever going on, like it was a really good deal, and it's like this will push us further, and knowing how he is with all the other bands, like he's not like one of those like greedy record label like execs that are trying to like take all your money and stuff like that. Like he's
So he had
actually.
a good reputation.
Oh yeah, and, like I mean, we looked into him and stuff, and we read over the contract and everything, and it was just one of those like, that's the first record label offer we got, but it's also the one that we think worked best for us. So we're like, yeah, let's do it, And I mean, I'm not unhappy with anything at all with him. Like everything that we've done with him so far is great. Like I mean, we put a 7-inch out, split with this one band called Black Mass from Massachusetts. Like we put out some singles through him, and then I mean this album, he got us even a hookup with a brewery in Atlanta to get a beer done, that we had at our record release show.
What? What was it called?
It was
The
called From
beer.
the Depths. It was named after one of the singles, From the Depths. It was a
Nice.
stout.
It was a that's my favorite
Yeah.
kind too. I love me a Guinness. So that I would drink that.
Yeah, and it was funny. The bar that I work at is 2 doors over from this venue that we have in Augusta, and I convinced my boss to like have the beer there for the show. So
Nice. And he did
we
it.
had it on draft and cans.
That's awesome. That's got to feel good when you like see your own beer. You're like, I've made an accomplishment as a man. This is a goal. This is
Oh, absolutely.
an
Even all
achievement
this,
unlocked.
even all the stuff this year that he's helped us get. It's like wow, like we have a bunch of shows being announced pretty soon that I'm very excited
Yeah.
for, and stuff that's already been announced. Like we're playing with Soulfly in 2 weeks.
Can we talk about
Uh,
that for a second? How the hell did that happen? Because I was like, oh my God, that's iconic.
so I was kind of surprised. Like it was the day before our album came out. We played in Columbia, South Carolina, and
I used to live there. Yeah. It's a cool
oh,
city.
okay, yeah. So I I was talking to Carlin, who runs all the booking there. He used to be in Augusta, like he lived in Augusta, and like ran a place called Greenlight Studios, like doing shows and stuff. And I was talking to him, and he was like, "Hey man, like we got Soulfly coming through. Do you want to play?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." Because like
Is that a
I'm not
question?
like I'm like not the hugest Soulfly fan because I'm not the hugest like new metal fan, But
I
like
got you.
they've got some good songs and stuff like that. But also it's like Max Cavalera from Sepultura. It's like
Iconic.
plus he like supports underground bands. So I mean the fact that
Yes, he
we play
does.
might support our stuff, like that'd be awesome. And then so we all got that, and then like a few weeks later, like a month or something like that later, uh when they're about to announce the tour, like Carlin sends me the like the flyer because I didn't know what the other bands were on the bill. And I saw Body Box. I was like, "What, dude? We're playing with Body Box?" Because I'm friends with Harry, because I've seen them a bunch of times in Columbia, and like I was like, "Dude, this is so rad."
So the two of you
So
are texting back and forth, like, dude.
oh
dude.
yeah. Everyone is like, "Yeah, dude, I'm so excited for this." And then we're playing with Heathen in March too. Like we got offered that like 2 weeks ago or something. And
Nice.
then we have some stuff that we cannot announce yet that I'm super excited for. It's like a pretty big fest that we got added onto. So
Very cool. So how does one even prepare for a big show like that, or at least one that's like pretty important?
I don't know. I mean, it's just making sure that we're all tight, I
Yeah.
guess, and like we're not screwing around. Like, there's a lot of bands that kind of like when starting out, they don't really have that. I wouldn't say drive, but they don't have like the professional sense about them. Like they take a
Mm.
while to get off stage, like or get on stage with like loading their gear, which that's like a recurring thing that I think a lot of bands need to kind of understand. Which if they're veterans in being bands, then it's different. They know.
Yeah.
But like as far as like bands starting out, like people that have never been in bands before, they don't kind of realize like, hey, like we gotta be as professional as possible, like when we're there and all that. So it's just doing that, like making sure that we get on and off stage in a timely manner, making sure our set time doesn't go over. That way, like we don't screw up the schedule that's going on. Because I mean, like a lot of the time we're playing with bands that are touring, so I mean they have a schedule. Like they might need to
They
leave
gotta go.
at a certain time, yeah, to get to the next place because they might have a 9 hour drive after that. And we don't want to screw that up. So
Yeah.
just doing that. I mean, it's and then you know, I mean, have fun, but be respectful to everyone. That as long as like you're treated properly, like be respectful. And
Yeah.
I
I've
think
seen
I was gonna say I think with that, like, you're gonna get further if you act that way. Because I mean, people are gonna want to hang out with you and support you if you're not acting like a dick. So
yeah, we don't need that. We don't have time for that. No, it's just
exactly.
well, but you make a good point because I mean, I've seen that within our own community here in Minnesota. I mean, most of it is in the Twin Cities. I live in Rochester, which is like an hour outside in the cornfields with the big
Yeah.
hospital called Mayo Clinic. But like, even within our scene, there are specific bands that have a horrible reputation because they don't do those basics that you're talking about. And then there are some that have a great reputation because they help at load in. They help whenever everybody's packing up. They don't touch each other's equipment or mess with the settings. They leave them alone. Like
Yeah.
there are certain bands that have a good reputation because they know those fundamentals and they know those basics, and it's just respectful and everybody has a good time and keeps it moving.
Absolutely. And I'm a very big proponent on either buying another band's merch or like doing merch swaps and stuff like that. Like
Oh,
buy, I
cool.
mean, if I mean, I'm also a proponent of like playing with bands that you like. Like I wouldn't want to play with a band that I'm not you know, like that I'm like, oh, I don't like this band because that just makes me not be in the best mindset. I mean, sometimes you have to take those shows, but like, it. I tend to like playing with bands that we like, and for the most part, we've done that. And it's just like, I mean, buy those bands merch, like, because they'll buy your merch, and then who knows, like, who will see them, and then they might see the shirt they're wearing and be like, who's that? Or, whatever.
Yeah.
But it also supports them monetarily because, I mean, we're all poor, we all don't have any money, and we're trying to, do
Yeah.
stuff like buying a van, which we're in the process of now, and stuff like that. And it's just, like the further you get someone else, the further they're going to get you.
Right. Literally too. Like I've seen 3 shirts can equal gas to the next tour stop.
Oh,
Like just by
absolutely.
like, and people don't think about it that way, but it's so true. So
Yeah.
you mentioned you've got a couple fun things coming up. Some you can talk about, some you can't talk about. What are some things that you definitely want to be sure you mention?
So I mean, we've got these two shows for sure coming up. We've got this tour in April with Quiescent Mantis that we're doing. We're doing Johnson City, Tennessee, Richmond, Virginia, and then we're playing that Total Death Fest in Spartanburg, South Carolina.
Fun.
Which is a very weird bill for us because I mean it's like a lot of like deathcore and metalcore and like I mean we've played with a lot of metalcore bands and stuff like that, which is fine. I'm cool with that. Like they support us and we'll support them. And like I like some of their music. But like it's definitely like a very weird bill, but it's also going to be like a fun show, I think, because you know, kind of breaking that boundary of like, oh, like people who listen to thrash aren't going to go to stuff like this. I'm like, why not? It's
Yeah.
just it's heavy music, and like there might be stuff you don't like about it, but there's also stuff that you'll find that you enjoy, because I was never a big metalcore person, but I found like bands that I like, that have certain qualities that I enjoy about music that I stick with. Like, for example, like some buddies of ours in Backslide that are from Augusta as well. They're a metalcore band, and they are awesome. Like they last minute filled in a show that I booked at Gransky Records in Augusta, and it practically sold out. I mean, they played our record release as well, but I mean,
Yeah.
there's people stage diving and stuff like that. Yeah. Aside from those things, though, like we're just working on new music, and we're in the process of getting a van, and so that way we can do the tour properly. Because I mean, driving separate vehicles is not really realistic for like driving
No, it's a
6
lot.
hours. Yeah, and yeah, I mean that's as far as that's all I can really talk about. Everything else is like we got to keep it on the low. But I'm looking forward to everything because like we're talking to like some bigger bands about playing shows with them and stuff like that. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna I'm not going to necessarily mention them, but you know, you can probably tell.
We're gonna put the vibe out there though that it's gonna
Yeah,
happen, and we're excited for it. So the best place to stay up to date: Instagram, Facebook, anywhere else?
I would say Instagram and Facebook. We don't really do much on Twitter. I kind of realize like until you get a bit bigger than like at the point that we're at, you know, Twitter's not really a feasible place to be at the moment.
Oh,
We'll like make basic updates and stuff like, oh, the album came out or a single came out or you know, this is a really big show. But mainly Instagram and Facebook, you know. Uh we have like a TikTok and stuff like that that we don't post regularly yet, but I want to start being able to like post more stuff. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much the best ways to keep up. We post some on Bandcamp just to like update people, you know, if there's like merch coming out and stuff like that. But that's pretty much it as far as like keeping up with us. We have like a link tree in the bio of all our stuff so people can find everything as well.
nice. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me. Good luck with everything that's to come.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.